And here we are, final part, and we have Holocaust. Now, this figure I was really looking forward to because, as I think I said during my 31 Days of Evil, during the Apocalypse review, the Age of Apocalypse is my all-time favorite X-Men story. So anytime that I can get a character from the Age of Apocalypse, I'm super excited. And this is an Age of Apocalypse character. Now you can go, well, okay, but he was in the 615 universe too. Well, yes, he was, and his armor is different. Now, here's the difference. His gun arm on the left hand, in the 616 universe, that it looks like a gun barrel. In the Age of Apocalypse, it was more like a mace that fired and shot things. But this figure really looks good. Now, I know there's some people that complain about the chicken pox red spots, but I hate to say it, but that's really how the figure looks in the comics. I mean, he looks exactly like that. He's got a skeletal body inside of this big, huge war suit. To me, he looks like candy. He looks like butterscotch or something. But he's really cool. And yeah, I normally don't like these smaller Build-A-Figures, but with him, I can see where they were going because of the size of the chest and everything. You know, he really is a real nice Build-A-Figure, and he has fairly good articulation. You know, it's ball joints up in here, knees, single knees, no pivot and swivel. Pivot and swivel on the feet though, so they'll go back and forward and rotate. The arms are pivot swivel style joints. He can raise his arms, but it's kind of hindered by the big shoulder pads here. The cool thing I thought was his head. Now, this we'll talk about here in a second. The head of the skull, you can actually sit there and make him look down, make him look up, turn to the left, turn to the right. Okay, strike that, reverse it. But really, it does look good, and he has a nice range of motion in his body. Very good figure. I've got to say, I really like the way he looks. I think he was really well executed to an extent. And this brings me to the problem I had. Whenever I went to go start putting this review together, I noticed there is, and it's not going to show up because it's translucent yellow plastic, and I'm in a really bright room. But right here where you can't see it, there's a little stress fracture already on the toy. I just completed this thing last week, so you know, that kind of sucks. And from what I understand, it's something that's pretty regular to the toy. I'm going to try and see what I can do about reinforcing it with some glue or something. I don't know. I'm going to try to preserve it as much as I can. But, yeah, not good. I don't like a figure that's going to already be broken days after I get it. That's kind of, you know, for lack of a better term, gay. You know, I would expect more, especially if I'm having to spend as much as I'm having to spend on these toys. But you can fix it and hold it in place by putting his shoulder pads up above it. It'll hold the armor down quite nicely. But I shouldn't have to do it. You know, I should be able to just enjoy my figure and not have to worry about it breaking, you know, specifically so soon. But then again, maybe that was why this thing was going to be postponed. So now it's going to give me fits. And I really don't want him broken. Okay, so I think aside from that little problem I have with him, he's a very good figure, and You know, if you find them, I would suggest getting them. I would suggest getting the whole line just for the Holocaust. This has been like the first line that Hasbro has done where I have actually wanted all the figures, or needed all the figures, and really wanted to build a figure. That's something that they hadn't really hit on, with the exception of the Ronin series. And that was only because I didn't have any of the Fantastic Four, so that worked. You know, buying all those toys, I didn't feel like I was getting duped into anything that I didn't want. But this line, despite the shortcomings of the figures in it that I was disappointed with, the characters are still represented, and that's what I like about. That's what I like whenever Marvel Legends actually works and these Build-A-Figures actually work, is that you actually end up with an expansive, with a series that actually expands on the entirety of the Marvel Universe, and this series does that real well. You got, with the Build-A-Figure, of course, Holocaust, and the Beast, you got your X-Men. With Tiger, you got your Avengers. Daredevil and Punisher, you got your solo characters. Nova, you got your new Warriors and your intergalactic character. And with Black Bolt, you got another intergalactic character. And on top of that, you got your first Inhuman that we've had in the line. So this is really a nice, well-rounded line as far as the characters. It would have been nice for them to have included a villain or something in the line, aside from the Build-A-Figure, because, you know, they really lack in the villains department, and most toy lines do, because they theorize that kids don't want the bad guys. Well, in almost every toy line that I've ever bought, if I've ever had the option, I've always bought the bad guy first. So, and this goes back to whenever I was 3 and 4 years old buying He-Man toys. You know, bad guys. They were always cooler looking, and you know, they could have used a bad guy instead of like maybe the Punisher or something. They could have thrown another villain in there, but they didn't. I could deal with it because, as I said, for me, I actually needed or wanted all the characters in this series. So to me, it was nice and complete. And if this ends up being the swan song of the Build-A-Figures, you know, I'm not too upset, because now they have that Marvel U, that they have the, you know, larger scale Marvel U figures. I don't have to buy like 14 figures. I just, or you know, I'm sorry, 6 to 8 figures. I can just buy the big figure, and it ends up fitting okay with the line, or at least the Goliath does. But you know, so I don't really need the Build-A-Figures anymore if they're going to keep making those giant figures from for the Marvel Universe. That works for me. I'll fill the big figures in with my Marvel Legends and be happy. But you know, like I said, if this was the swan song for the Build-A-Figures, I'm okay with it. A lot of people wouldn't be, because of the fact that, you know, it was split down the middle with 3 brand new figures and 3 different versions of figures that have already been released. The figures aren't all top-notch, but then again, the line hasn't really been top-notch since the Giant Man series that was last done by Toy Biz. So, you know, for me, it's okay. If they just want to sit there and package singles and 2-packs, do it to your heart's content, because I am all for that now. Because the Build-A-Figure thing, it hasn't really, since Hasbro's had it, and actually since right before the Giant Man series, there's been one really, really good Build-A-Figure, and that was Fin Fang Foom. And the rest have been these moderately sized where, you know, like with Holocaust here, Omega Red and Mr. Sinister are just as big as he is, they're just not as broad. Same thing with Ronin, Ares, you know, there hasn't been any real big figures. So anyway, this is World War 2112, wrapping up my review on the Nemesis series, saying until next time, Excelsior.